Imagine this, a billionaire powerful enough to silence boardrooms with a single glance. But one quiet night, he followed his gardener through the rain, and what he saw behind an old wooden shed broke his heart in ways money never could. This isn't just another story about the rich and the poor, it's about what's left when power fades, when pride shatters, and when love in its simplest form finds its way back home. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city or country in the comments so we can see how far our stories travel. And if you love tales that stir your soul and remind you what humanity feels like, hit that subscribe button, tap the bell, and join our growing family of believers in kindness, grace, and second chances. The Cole mansion sat at the far end of Magnolia Drive, a place people drove past just to stare at its iron gates and imagine the kind of life that lived beyond them. The lawns were trimmed like velvet, fountains whispered secrets into the night air, and the scent of roses lingered in every breeze. Inside those walls, wealth sparkled, but peace did not live there. Mr. Raymond Cole, the man behind the empire, spent most evenings in the solitude of his study, watching rain glide down glass. To the world, he was the king of finance, polished, untouchable, and cold as the stone floors beneath his feet. But those who had once known him, back when he still smiled, would have told you he wasn't always this way. Something had broken him years ago, something he buried under layers of marble, glass, and silence. Every morning at dawn, before the mansion fully woke, Mr. Cole would take his coffee and walk through his garden, the only place that still calmed him. It was the one thing he had kept after his wife's passing. She had loved roses, red, yellow, and especially white, the color of forgiveness, she used to say. That garden became his sanctuary, but it also became the stage where a quiet mystery began to unfold. The new gardener had arrived just 3 weeks earlier. His name was Malik, a young man in his early 20s, tall and slim, with skin the color of warm bronze and eyes that held a kind of tired kindness you couldn't fake. He spoke little, worked hard, and always finished his chores before anyone else even started breakfast. Raymond noticed him because of his silence, not the lazy kind, but the kind that hides stories. Malik never joined the other staff for lunch. He never made phone calls. He barely lifted his gaze unless spoken to. But at night, from his window overlooking the garden, Raymond sometimes saw Malik walking toward the old shed near the far fence, the one no one used anymore, hidden by climbing vines and broken tools. At first, Raymond thought nothing of it. Everyone needs a moment alone. But then it started happening more often, same time, same place, always after midnight, and sometimes soft music. At first, Raymond thought it was the wind humming through the trees. But one night, he realized it was Malik, singing, a gentle, trembling voice carrying words that sounded too painful to belong to a man so young. "Who are you, boy?" Raymond murmured from his window one night, his reflection flickering in the glass. "And what are you hiding back there?" The next morning, he walked down to the garden earlier than usual. Malik was already there, pruning roses with slow precision. "Morning, sir," Malik said softly, eyes still focused on the petals. "Morning," Raymond replied, his tone even. He watched him work for a while. "You like this garden?" "Yes, sir, it's peaceful here." Raymond studied his face, that calm, almost too calm expression. "Peaceful, huh? Most men your age run from peace." Malik gave a faint smile. "Sometimes peace is all you've got left." Those words hung in the air like mist. Something in them tugged at a memory deep inside Raymond, of a boy's voice, once laughing in these same gardens before fate tore everything apart. He nodded slowly and turned away. But that sentence, "sometimes peace is all you've got left," wouldn't stop echoing in his mind. That night, rain returned to Magnolia Drive, and with it, curiosity. Raymond stood by his window again. Midnight. Malik slipped out, hood pulled over his head, walking quietly through the drizzle toward that same old shed. This time, Raymond didn't just watch. He reached for his coat. Something told him that whatever was behind that shed wasn't just a secret. It was a truth, and it had been waiting for him far longer than he realized. He stepped out into the rain, the gravel crunching beneath his shoes. The scent of wet roses filled the air. Lightning flickered, revealing Malik's silhouette near the shed. Raymond's heart pounded for reasons he didn't understand. He moved closer, silent, cautious, his shadow blending with the darkness, and just before he could peer through the window of the shed, a sound froze him in place, a soft voice, a child's voice. The rain came down steady and cold, drumming softly on the mansion's roof, sliding down the leaves like tears. Raymond stood motionless, his breath catching in the misty air as the faintest sound drifted from the old shed. Not wind this time, not music, but a child's laugh. For a man who hadn't heard laughter in his home for years, it struck him like thunder. His pulse quickened. The voice was small, fragile, innocent. It couldn't be. There weren't supposed to be any children on his property. He took a careful step closer. The earth beneath his polished shoes squelched, the rain now mingling with the anxious sweat on his forehead. Through a gap in the wooden panels, a dim flicker of candlelight danced inside the shed. He could see Malik kneeling on the floor, head bowed, whispering softly to someone out of sight. Raymond's fingers tightened around the edge of the wooden wall. He leaned forward, trying to hear. The words came in pieces, carried on the rain. "Eat slowly, okay? I know it's cold, but Daddy's here now. Daddy." The word hit Raymond like a stone in the chest. His jaw tightened. Malik had a child, living here, in his shed. He peeked again. A small figure moved closer. A little boy, maybe 5 or 6, with curly hair and eyes far too big for his tiny face, wrapped in a blanket that looked worn thin. Malik tore a piece of bread in half and handed it to the child with trembling fingers. "Tomorrow, I'll get more," Malik whispered. "I'll ask Mrs. Jenkins at the back kitchen. Just don't cry, okay?" The child nodded, his lips shivering. Then he whispered something that broke the billionaire's composure completely. "Will she ever come back, Daddy?" Malik froze, just for a second, then forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "No, baby, Mummy's with the angels now." Raymond stepped back, heart hammering, mind spinning. This young man, his gardener, was hiding a child in his shed. But not out of malice, out of desperation. 1,000 thoughts rushed through him. Anger, pity, shock, then guilt. How long had the boy been living there? How had he not noticed? He remembered the quiet mornings, Malik skipping breakfast, his hands trembling some days, the way he'd never asked for an advance, never complained about anything. Raymond stood there, soaked, trembling, torn between confronting him and walking away. But then he heard it, Malik's quiet sob. It wasn't the cry of a criminal. It was the sound of a man breaking, quietly, privately, where no one could see. Lightning flashed, briefly lighting the inside of the shed again. This time Raymond saw something else, a small photo pinned to the wooden wall. He couldn't make out much, but it looked like a woman and a little boy, taken years ago. A knock of thunder rolled across the sky. The candle flickered. The boy startled. "Shush, Shark. It's okay," Malik murmured, pulling him close. "Daddy's here. You're safe. I promise." The tenderness in his voice made Raymond's chest ache. It reminded him of nights long ago, when he'd told his own son the same words, back when laughter still filled these gardens, before the accident that had taken everything from him. For a long moment, he just stood there, watching, silent, rain washing over his face. He could have called the guards, could have shouted, fired Malik on the spot. But he didn't. He just couldn't. Something about the sight of that man and that child, surviving together in the cold, felt painfully familiar. He had lost everything once too. And maybe, deep down, he envied the young man for still having something left to protect. The storm grew heavier. Raymond turned and slowly walked back to the mansion, each step echoing with confusion and compassion tangled together. When he reached the doorway, he looked back one last time at the shed, a faint light still glowing through the cracks. Inside that broken little space lived something he hadn't seen in years. Love. Raw, simple, unpolished love. The kind that didn't need chandeliers or silver cutlery to exist. He whispered to himself, "God help that boy, and help me do the right thing." Then he entered the mansion, dripping wet, heart heavier than ever. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was certain. He couldn't pretend he hadn't seen what he saw. The storm had passed. Morning broke with a quiet kind of beauty, the kind that hides the chaos it washed away. The roses glittered with raindrops like tiny glass beads. The air smelled of earth, new, alive. But inside Raymond Cole's chest, the storm still raged. He hadn't slept, not a wink, all night. He sat by the window, the memory of that candle-lit shed playing over and over like a film on repeat. The boy's trembling hands, Malik's tired eyes. That one word that wouldn't stop echoing, Daddy. For a man who built his empire on logic and control, this was the first time in years he didn't know what to do. At exactly 7, the sound of footsteps in the garden caught his attention. Through the window he saw Malik, already working again, as though nothing had happened. He moved quietly, trimming wet leaves, his expression unreadable. If Raymond hadn't seen what he saw last night, he would have believed this was just another normal morning. But now he saw the dark circles beneath Malik's eyes, the slow, weary motions of a man carrying more than just pruning shears. He took a deep breath, grabbed his coat, and stepped outside. The morning air was cold against his face. The world was quiet, except for the low buzz of bees and the distant call of a bird waking somewhere beyond the walls. Malik looked up when he heard footsteps approaching. His eyes flickered with surprise, and then guarded calm. "Good morning, sir." Raymond's voice was level. "Morning, Malik. You start early." "Yes, sir." The rain knocked off a few petals. "I didn't want them to rot." Raymond nodded slowly. "Dedicated man." Malik smiled faintly, but there was tension in it. "It's my job." The billionaire studied him for a long moment, the way his hands moved, careful and deliberate. The boy was trying to pretend everything was fine, but Raymond wasn't the kind of man who missed details. He gestured toward the roses. "These were my wife's favorite," he said softly. "She used to say every flower carries a story." Malik's gaze lifted. "She was right, sir. Some grow in sunshine, others in rain." That made Raymond pause. He folded his arms, eyes narrowing just slightly. "Tell me, Malik, what kind of story grows behind that old shed?" The shears in Malik's hand stopped mid-cut. Silence, then a whisper. "You were there." "I was." Raymond's tone wasn't angry, just calm, steady, the kind of calm that makes truth impossible to escape. "And I heard everything." Malik swallowed hard. The color drained from his face. I can explain. I'm listening." He looked around nervously, as if the trees themselves could betray him. "Please, sir, don't fire me. I didn't mean to disrespect your property. His voice cracked. "I just needed somewhere safe." "Safe for who?" Raymond pressed, though his voice softened. Malik's eyes glistened. "For my son." The words broke the tension like glass shattering. He exhaled shakily, wiping at his face. "His name's Caleb. He's 6. We've been living in that shed for 2 weeks. I didn't have anywhere else to go." Raymond's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. "My wife died last year, sir. She had lupus. The bills took everything we had. I sold the house, the car, everything. I came here looking for any kind of work. I planned to find a small place after my first paycheck, but," he looked down, "every cent went to her hospital debt. And when the nights got cold, I couldn't leave my boy out there. I couldn't." His voice broke into a whisper. "I know it's wrong, but I swear, sir, I never meant harm. I just didn't want him on the streets." Raymond's throat tightened. The sincerity in Malik's voice was raw, too raw to fake. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Only the faint hum of the morning filled the silence. Raymond turned away, staring out at the dripping roses. "You know, I had a son once," he said quietly. Malik's head lifted slightly. "He was about Caleb's age when I lost him, drunk driver on Highway 9. His voice was steady but hollow. "He used to play right here in this garden. He'd steal my pruning shears and pretend he was helping me." A faint, broken smile touched his lips. "I buried him before I buried my wife. After that I stopped coming here, until recently." Malik's lips parted, but no words came. Raymond finally looked at him, really looked at him. "When I saw you in that shed last night, holding your boy, I didn't see a thief, Malik. I saw a father." The young man's eyes welled instantly. "Sir, I saw a man trying to do right in a world that hasn't been kind to him." He stepped closer, his tone firm but gentle. "But you can't stay in that shed. That boy deserves better than hiding." Malik nodded quickly. "I understand. I'll leave." "No," Raymond cut him off. "You'll move into the staff quarters, the empty room next to the kitchen. You and your son." Malik blinked. "Sir, I can't accept that." "You're not accepting charity," Raymond said, voice sharp enough to silence him. "You're accepting mercy, the same mercy I wish someone had given me when I needed it." Tears slipped down Malik's face, mixing with the light drizzle that had begun again. "Thank you, sir, thank you." Raymond turned away before the emotion could show on his own face. "Just promise me something, anything." He looked back, eyes glinting. "Raise that boy with love, real love. Not the kind that hides, but the kind that stands tall, no matter who's watching." Malik's voice trembled. "I promise." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of wet roses around them. For the first time in years, Raymond felt something shift inside him, a weight loosening, a light slowly returning. He looked up at the sky, grey but softening, and whispered under his breath, "Maybe forgiveness really does grow in the rain." The next morning came with sunlight that didn't feel warm anymore. It stretched through the living room blinds, touching the framed pictures on the wall. Malik as a little boy holding his first trophy, the family barbecue from 3 summers ago, and one of David and Lisa on their wedding day, back when the world still made sense. David sat alone at the dining table. A half-empty cup of coffee sat before him, untouched for hours. His phone lay beside it, silent. He had scrolled through Malik's messages 100 times last night, rereading his son's last words. "Dad, I just need time to figure myself out. Please don't come after me." That line hit him like a slow knife each time. "Figure myself out," Malik had said, like he was lost in a maze his father didn't even know existed. David's fingers brushed the edge of a folded envelope resting near the salt shaker. It had been there since dawn, when Lisa slid it toward him before leaving for work. Her eyes were red, her tone calm but cold. "He left this for you," she'd whispered, now staring at it. David's heartbeat grew loud in the silence. He slowly opened it. Malik's handwriting filled the page, crooked, hurried but familiar. "Dad, I know you're angry. I know you don't understand why I had to go, but I couldn't stay where I felt like I had to earn love by being perfect. You taught me strength, but sometimes being strong means walking away. I'm not trying to hurt you. I just need to find who I am outside your expectations. I'll come home when I can look you in the eye and know you're proud of me, not the version you wanted me to be. Malik." David closed his eyes. A sound escaped him, not quite a sob, not quite a sigh, just pain, heavy and human. He whispered, "Boy, you think I'm not proud of you?" He looked up at the photo wall again, the trophies, the birthday candles, the memories. How did we get here? The house was too quiet. Even the clock ticked slower, as if time itself was mourning. Just then, the front door opened. It was Marcus, David's younger brother, walking in with that same confident grin he'd always worn. But the moment he saw David's face, his smile faded. Still no word from him. Marcus asked, pulling out a chair. David shook his head. "He's gone, man. Just gone. Says he needs space." Marcus sighed. "Space ain't always bad. Sometimes you gotta give a man time to breathe before you can talk heart to heart." David looked at him, eyes raw. "But I'm his father. My job is to protect him. What if something happens out there?" Marcus leaned back. "Then you'll go find him when the time's right. But right now, you gotta let him see what the world feels like without you hovering. Sometimes love means stepping back." The words hit David deep. He wanted to argue, to shout, to defend himself, but all he could do was stare at the empty chair across from him, Malik's chair, and whisper. I just wanted him to know he mattered. Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. "He knows, Dave. He just needs to feel it his way." Silence filled the room again, but this time it wasn't the suffocating kind. It was softer, like maybe healing had quietly taken a seat between them. David finally rose from the table. He folded Malik's letter and tucked it in his wallet, close to his heart. Then he walked to the window, looking out at the driveway where Malik's old car used to sit. He whispered to the wind, "Find your peace, son. I'll be right here when you're ready." The sun broke through the clouds just then, spilling golden light across the family photos. For the first time in days, David smiled, small, trembling, but real. Because somewhere deep down, he knew this wasn't the end of their story. It was just the pause before the healing. If you've ever had to let someone you love go, just to help them find themselves, you know how David feels. Would you have done the same if you were in his place? Comment below. And if this story touched you, hit subscribe. More emotional, powerful stories like this one are coming your way every week. Malik had never driven that far alone before. The hum of the highway filled the car, steady and endless, like it was trying to drown out his thoughts. His phone buzzed a few times from the passenger seat, but he didn't dare look. He knew who it was, and he wasn't ready, not yet. The road stretched on, golden with dust and sunlight. He had no destination at first, just away from the look in his father's eyes, away from the weight of always being the example. But as the city faded in the rearview mirror, a strange mix of guilt and relief swirled in his chest. He loved his dad more than he could ever explain, but being home had started to feel like living inside someone else's dream. He drove until the night sky swallowed the road. A neon sign flickered ahead. Daisy's Diner, open late. His stomach growled, and his heart needed somewhere to land, even for a moment. He pulled in. The diner looked like something from another decade. Checkered floors, chrome counters, and a jukebox humming softly in the corner. Inside, a woman with tired eyes but a warm smile handed him a menu. "Rough night?" she asked. Malik smiled faintly. "Rough week." She nodded knowingly. "Coffee?" He nodded. When she walked off, he took out his notebook, the same one his dad bought him when he was 16, back when David still believed Malik would follow his path into law. Malik flipped past the old pages filled with college notes and empty plans and stopped at a blank one. For the first time in years, he wrote not for grades or expectations, but for himself. "Somewhere between being who they want me to be and who I really am, I got lost. But maybe this is how I find my way back. Not home, just back to me." As the words filled the page, a calmness settled in. He didn't know what tomorrow looked like. He didn't know how long he'd be gone. But for the first time, he wasn't scared of being alone. The bell above the diner door jingled. Malik looked up. A familiar face walked in. His cousin Jordan. "Man, I've been calling you for 2 days," Jordan said, sliding into the booth. "Your mum's worried sick. Uncle Dave's quiet. Too quiet. You okay?" Malik shrugged. "Just needed to breathe." Jordan studied him. "You think running away's gonna make him understand you better?" Malik's lips tightened. "No, but staying there made me forget who I was." Jordan exhaled. "All right, but don't make him wait forever. That man's got a pride as big as his heart, and both are breaking right now." Malik looked down at his coffee, the steam fogging his glasses. "I'll go back when I know how to talk to him without turning it into another argument." Jordan smiled softly. "When you do, don't talk first. Just listen. That's what he's been missing." Malik chuckled. It sounded tired, but it was the first real laugh he'd had in days. "Since when did you become the family therapist?" Jordan grinned. "Since I saw 2 stubborn people trying to love each other without knowing how." They sat there for hours, talking about old times, the fishing trips, the basketball games, the late-night talks on the porch when Malik was just a kid and believed his dad could fix anything. By the time they stepped outside, dawn had started to break, soft orange light painting the sky. Malik looked toward the east, toward home. He whispered, "Maybe it's time I stop running from him and start running to myself." Jordan patted his shoulder. "And when you're ready, home's just a road away." Back at home, that same morning, David was outside watering the small patch of garden he'd once built for Malik when he was little, a spot where they planted tomatoes and sunflowers every summer. He looked at the sprouting vines and said quietly, "You're growing, boy. I can feel it." A single sunflower tilted in the breeze, catching the light just right. David smiled. It had been 3 weeks since Malik left, 3 long weeks of silence, 3 weeks of replaying that night, the rain, the anger, the pain in his father's eyes. He'd been staying with Jordan on the edge of the city, helping him at the auto shop during the day, and writing at night. It was funny, the sound of engines had replaced the sound of boardrooms, and somehow that felt easier to breathe in, but every time he wiped grease off his hands, he saw flashes of the old house, the porch light still flickering, the sunflower patch, his father's tired face standing alone by the gate. One afternoon, as Malik sat outside the shop, an old man walked by selling small hand-carved wooden figures. Malik picked one up, a carving of a man and a small boy planting something together. "How much?" he asked. The old man smiled. "For you? Just take it. Looks like you could use a reminder." Malik blinked. "A reminder of what?" "That nothing good grows without getting a little dirt on your hands first." The words hit deep, almost too deep. Malik held the carving for a long while after the man left, tracing the tiny grooves with his thumb. That night, he packed a small bag. Jordan didn't say a word when he saw it. He just handed Malik the car keys and nodded. "You know where to go." The drive back home felt slower this time, heavier with memory. The road seemed to whisper everything he'd tried to forget. His dad teaching him to tie a tie, his mum's laugh echoing in the kitchen, his father's voice calling him son in that proud, grounding way. When he pulled into the driveway, the lights were dim. The house looked smaller somehow, or maybe he'd just grown enough to see it differently. He sat in the car for a long time, listening to the night. Then he stepped out. The garden was still there, though the weeds had crept in. The shed stood at the back, weathered but strong, just like his father. He walked toward it slowly. A soft rustling came from behind the shed, and then he heard the faint sound of humming. He froze. It was his father, kneeling beside the old patch of soil, hands dirty, eyes glistening under the porch light. He was tending to the plants, Malik's plants. David didn't look up right away. He spoke softly, as if to the earth itself. "You left these to die, son." "But I couldn't let that happen. I just couldn't." Malik swallowed hard. His voice came out rough. I didn't mean to leave you, Dad. David looked up then, eyes wide. For a second, neither of them moved. Then David stood, slowly, his hands trembling slightly. Malik. It wasn't a question, it was a release. Malik took a step forward. I didn't know how to talk to you without disappointing you. David exhaled. And I didn't know how to love you without controlling you. The words hung between them, raw, fragile, but true. Malik's eyes glistened. I'm not the man you wanted me to be. David shook his head. No, you're the man your mother prayed you'd become, and that's even better. They stood there for a long time, the night wrapping them in silence. Then David opened his arms. Malik hesitated for only a second before stepping into an embrace that said everything. Words never could. David's voice broke softly against his shoulder. Don't ever think you have to run to prove yourself to me. Malik smiled through the tears. Then don't ever think I stopped being your son. Behind them, the shed door creaked in the breeze. The same place where everything fell apart now held their quiet reunion. David looked toward the garden and said, Come on, you still remember how to plant. Malik chuckled. Maybe. You'll have to show me again. David grinned. Good. Then let's make it a clean start. And together, father and son, they dug their hands into the soil. The earth was cool, forgiving. The night air smelled like rain. When the first seed dropped into the ground, Malik whispered, For Mum. David nodded, voice thick, for her and for us. They worked until dawn, the first rays of sunlight spilling over their shoulders, two silhouettes side by side, finally learning that healing sometimes looks like planting new life where pain once grew. Morning broke soft and golden over the Wilson estate. The first sunbeams spilled across the old wooden shed, now surrounded by fresh soil and blooming green shoots. Birds perched on the fence, chirping the kind of song that only follows peace after a storm. Malik stood quietly by the window, watching his father move in the garden below. David was humming again, that same low tune he used to sing when Malik was a boy, when life was simple and love didn't have to be explained. For the first time in years, Malik smiled without guilt. He walked outside, coffee in hand, the smell of earth and dew thick in the air. David looked up and grinned. You still sleep half the day like a college kid, huh? Malik chuckled. Only when I've got a reason to wake up happy. David patted the soil beside him. Come on, lazy bones. These sunflowers won't plant themselves. Malik knelt beside him, digging his fingers into the dirt. It was rough, cool, and alive, like something sacred. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was easy, full. After a while, Malik asked quietly, Why'd you keep the garden all these years? David paused, his hands resting on the earth. Because it was the only thing that still felt like us. Even when we stopped talking, this place, it never stopped growing. Malik looked at the small shoots rising from the ground. Then I guess it forgave us before we forgave each other. David smiled faintly. The soil always does, son. You just gotta give it another chance. They sat there in the sunlight, shoulders brushing lightly, two men who had finally learned that love didn't need to be perfect to be real. Suddenly, Malik's phone buzzed. He frowned, picked it up, and his eyes widened. It was an email from a publishing company. The subject line read, We'd like to offer you a book deal. David saw his expression. Good news? Malik turned the screen toward him, smiling wide. They read my manuscript, Dad. They want to publish it. David blinked, stunned. The one you've been writing all this time. Yeah, Malik said softly. The one about us. For a long moment, David said nothing. Then he placed a steady hand on his son's shoulder. I guess following your own path wasn't a mistake after all. Malik's voice broke with emotion. It never was. I just needed to know you believed it too. David looked at him, really looked at him, and said, I do now. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Malik and David sat on the porch together, watching the sky burn gold and orange over their new garden. David sipped his tea. Your mum used to say sunflowers face the light no matter where they're planted. Malik nodded. Guess that's what we did, huh? David chuckled. Took us long enough. They both laughed, the kind of laugh that comes only when the pain finally lets go. Sometimes the richest people aren't those with money, but those who learn how to heal, forgive, and love again. If this story touched you, type I believe in second chances in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, because more beautiful stories like this are on the way.